An 8-year-old girl walked 3 miles in the Arizona heat carrying nothing but a motorcycle key. When she reached the Hells Angels clubhouse and told them she wanted to sell her dead father's Harley to save her dying mother, the club president's face went white. He recognized the bike model immediately. What he said next made grown men cry. And within an hour, 250 roaring engines were tearing down her street. What they did when they saw that Harley sitting in her driveway changed her life forever. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. The morning sun was already brutal when Emma woke up. That thick, oppressive Arizona heat that settles over everything before 8 a.m. and doesn't let go until long after dark. But the heat wasn't what made her chest feel tight. It was the sound coming from her mother's bedroom, or rather, the lack of sound. Her mother's breathing had changed overnight. It was shallow now, raspy. Each breath seemed like it took everything she had just to pull it in. Emma stood in the doorway, watching her mother's chest rise and fall, with a struggle that made Emma's own lungs ache in sympathy. The pile of papers on the kitchen table seemed to have grown overnight. Medical bills with red stamps across them, final notices, collection letters, and there, right on top, the eviction notice. 14 days. That's all they had left. But there was one thing left. Emma turned and looked out the kitchen window. There, sitting in the driveway under a faded tarp, was her father's Harley Davidson, the last piece of him they had. The bike he'd loved more than anything except his family. Emma made a decision that morning that would bring 250 strangers to her doorstep. She walked to the small drawer where her mother kept important things and found the key to her father's Harley on a worn leather keychain. The metal was cool and heavy in her palm, heavier than it should be for something so small. Or maybe that was just the weight of what it represented. Her mother would be furious if she knew. Her mother would cry and say they'd find another way. But Emma had heard her mother crying in the bathroom last night, begging the hospital for more time, her voice breaking with each word. There was no other way. There was no more time. Emma was 8 years old, but she understood something that morning that most children never have to learn. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes sacrifice is the only choice left. She left a note on the pillow beside her mother's head. "Mama, I went to get help. I'll be back soon. I love you more than the whole sky. Emma." She drew a small heart at the bottom. Then she walked out into the Arizona heat with nothing but her father's Harley key. Emma had heard the motorcycles the night before, distant thunder rolling through the evening air. Her father used to talk about the sound of Harleys in a pack, how you could feel it in your chest before you heard it with your ears. And last night, lying in bed listening to her mother's struggling breaths, Emma had heard that heartbeat in the distance. She remembered something her father had said once, something about brothers, something about family on the road, something about people who never left one of their own behind. So Emma followed the sound. She walked down her street, past the neighbors just starting to wake up, past the corner store with the faded awning, past the church with the broken sign. The Arizona sun climbed higher. The heat pressed down on her like a physical weight. Sweat soaked through her shirt. Her throat went dry. After the first mile, Emma had to stop. She pulled the key from her pocket and stared at it. The leather keychain was worn smooth from her father's hands. She thought about turning back, going home, pretending everything was fine. But then she remembered the sound of her mother's breathing, and Emma stood up and kept walking. By the third mile, the sound of motorcycles was getting louder. Her heart started beating faster, though whether from hope or fear, she couldn't tell. Maybe both. The motorcycle sounds were coming from a building up ahead, a low, sprawling structure with bikes parked out front. Lots of bikes. More bikes than Emma had ever seen in one place. Chrome gleaming in the sunlight, and men. Dozens of men in leather vests and worn jeans. Emma stopped at the edge of the property. Her courage, which had carried her 3 miles through the Arizona heat, suddenly faltered. But she'd come this far. She couldn't turn back now. Emma took a deep breath, wrapped her small fist tighter around her father's key, and walked toward the Hells Angels Arizona chapter clubhouse. The clubhouse sat at the end of a long gravel drive, surrounded by more motorcycles than Emma could count. The men looked exactly like what Emma had expected, and nothing like it at the same time. They were massive, most of them. Broad shoulders straining against leather vests, arms covered in tattoos, long beards, boots that had seen 1,000 miles of road. They looked dangerous, but Emma didn't have the luxury of staying away. Her worn shoes crunched on the gravel. The sound cut through everything. In an instant, every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the small figure walking toward them. An 8-year-old girl, dusty and sweaty, her face flushed from the heat, walking into the heart of a biker clubhouse like she had every right to be there. Then one man stepped forward. He was older than most of the others, his beard more gray than black, his face weathered by years of sun and wind and road. There was an authority in the way he moved that made it clear this was the president of the chapter. He crouched down to Emma's eye level. His voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly gentle. "Sweetheart, you lost?" Emma shook her head. Her voice, when it came out, was smaller than she wanted it to be. "No, sir, I want to sell my daddy's Harley." She swallowed hard. "I need money to help my mom. She's sick. She's real sick, and I'm too small to bring the bike here. But it's at my house. It's a good bike. My daddy took real good care of it." The president's eyebrows rose. "Where's your daddy, sweetheart? Why isn't he here?" Emma's eyes dropped to the ground. "He died 2 years ago. It's just me and Mama now, and she can't work anymore. And the bills—" Her voice broke. The president was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that would change everything. "What's your daddy's name?" Emma looked up at him and said her father's full name clearly, proudly. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The president's face went completely white. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Behind him, there were gasps, sharp intakes of breath. One man actually stumbled backward. Another's hand flew to his mouth. The president's hands were shaking. His voice, when he finally found it, was barely above a whisper. "Jesus Christ, kid, your daddy rode with us." The words hung in the air like smoke. Behind him, men were starting to murmur her father's name, saying it over and over. Some of them had tears in their eyes. These hard men, these rough men were crying. "We lost track of him years ago," the president continued, his voice thick with emotion. "He just disappeared. We looked for him. God, we looked, but we never—" He stopped, shook his head. "We never knew he had a family. We never knew he had a little girl." Emma's eyes were wide. You knew my daddy. Knew him." The president let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Sweetheart, your daddy was one of us. He was a brother. We rode together for years." He stood up, his full height impressive, commanding. He turned to face the assembled men, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Boys, saddle up." What happened in the next 60 seconds would mobilize the entire Arizona chapter. The memories came flooding back, each man adding a piece to the puzzle, rebuilding a picture of Emma's father that she'd only known as Daddy. "I remember when he first prospected," one man said, his voice thick. "Kid was scared as hell but wouldn't show it. He could fix anything," someone else offered. "Engine trouble, electrical problems. Give him a wrench in an hour. He'd have you back on the road." The president crouched down again, getting on Emma's level. "Your daddy was one of the best of us. We rode together for 5, maybe 6 years. That means family for life. It means when you disappear, when you just vanish one day without a word, it tears a hole in everyone who knew you." He paused. "We looked for him for months, called every hospital, every jail. Nothing. None of us, not one single man here, knew he had a family. If we'd known—" Emma's eyes were welling up now. He died 2 years ago," she whispered. "Accident at his work. They said it was quick." The president closed his eyes. A single tear escaped and ran down into his beard. "He left the life to take care of you and your mama. He chose being a daddy over being a brother, and that's the most honorable thing a man can do." Around them, men were openly crying now. "What happened to your mama?" the president asked gently. "She got sick about a year after Daddy died. Cancer. She kept working as long as she could, but now she can't get out of bed. And the bills just keep coming, and we sold everything else, and the only thing left is Daddy's bike. And I know Mama didn't want to sell it, But she's dying, and I can't. The words tumbled out faster until they dissolved into sobs. I can't lose her too. I can't be alone. The president pulled Emma into his arms. This massive man held this tiny girl against his chest while she cried, and he looked over her head at his brothers. And they all saw the same promise in his eyes. Mount up! The first engine roared to life, then another, then three more. Then suddenly, all at once, the air itself exploded with sound. 250 Harley-Davidson engines firing in rapid succession. The noise was overwhelming, glorious. It wasn't just sound. It was power made audible. It was fury and loyalty and brotherhood condensed into pure vibration. The president scooped Emma up and lifted her onto the seat of his bike. "You ever been on a bike before?" he asked. Emma shook her head. "Just hold on to me," he said. "And don't be scared. You're safer right now than you've ever been in your life." The convoy began to form with precision that spoke of years of riding together. The president took point, Emma sitting behind him. Then the rest fell into formation, two by two. A massive snake of chrome and steel stretching back and back and back. Then they started moving. With all 250 bikes moving together, the roar was apocalyptic. It echoed off buildings. It set off car alarms. It made windows rattle in their frames. People stopped what they were doing. Store owners came to their doors. Cars pulled over. Pedestrians froze mid-step, their phones coming out to record what they were seeing. As they turned onto Emma's street, neighbors came out of their houses. They all emerged onto their porches and lawns, their jaws dropping as this massive convoy of Hell's Angels rolled slowly down their quiet suburban street. Emma's small house looked even smaller now. The president slowed, the entire convoy slowing behind him, engines still rumbling. But what they were about to find would test every man there. Because sitting in that driveway under a faded tarp was more than just a motorcycle. It was a memorial. It was a piece of a man they'd loved and lost. It was sacred ground. If you believe family isn't just blood, it's loyalty, then you understand what drove those men to Emma's door. The engines began to quiet. One by one, the bikers killed their engines, and in the sudden silence, you could hear the sound of boots hitting pavement. The president helped Emma down from his bike, and they walked toward her driveway. The tarp was sun-faded, protecting something precious for so long. He reached out and took hold of the tarp, then pulled it back with gentleness. The Harley emerged like a resurrection. The chrome was dulled by time, covered in dust. The leather seat was cracked. The paint had lost its shine. But underneath, you could see what this bike had been. It was a Road King, the same model the president rode. His hand reached out and touched the seat. His voice was barely above a whisper. "It's his. I'd know this bike anywhere." A ripple went through the crowd. Men stepped closer. "I remember when he bought this," someone said softly. "Saved for 2 years." The president straightened up. He pulled out his wallet, counted out bills, more bills than Emma had ever seen. He knelt down and pressed them into her hands. "This is 3 times what that bike is worth on the market. We're not taking advantage of family. And your family now. You understand? Your family." Emma stared at the money. It was enough. More than enough. Enough to pay the bills. Enough to buy her mother's medicine. Enough to keep the house. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You can take the bike now." The president smiled, but it was a sad smile. He glanced back at his brothers. "We're not taking the bike, sweetheart." Emma blinked, confused. But I sold it to you. The money is yours. The bike stays here." He addressed the men behind him. "Boys, this Harley is coming home, back to the clubhouse, but not because we bought it, because we're restoring it. Every scratch buffed out, every crack repaired, everything brought back to exactly how it was. And then it's going on display in the clubhouse with his name above it, honoring a man who gave up the road to be a father." The men nodded. Some said, "Amen." "But it's your bike," the president continued, turning back to Emma. "It always will be. When you're older, if you want to ride it, it's yours. If you want to keep it in the clubhouse as a memorial, we'll keep it there forever. It's your choice. We're just taking care of it until you're ready." Emma couldn't speak. She just nodded over and over, tears streaming down her face. But the story was about to take a turn nobody saw coming. The bikers left that afternoon with promises and phone numbers. They'd loaded the Harley with care. They rumbled away, leaving behind an envelope of additional cash and the strange silence that comes after something momentous has ended. That was the afternoon. The night told a different story. Emma woke to a sound that turned her blood to ice. A gasping sound, a choking sound. She bolted out of bed. Her mother was on the floor beside her bed, her chest heaving, her lips tinged with blue. "Mama!" Emma's scream tore out of her throat. She dropped to her knees. "Mama, please breathe. Please." Emma's mind went blank with terror. Then something clicked. The bikers. The president had given her his phone number, but she didn't have time. She ran and burst through the front door into the night, and that's when she saw them. Two motorcycles parked at the end of her street under the streetlight. Two men in leather vests. They'd been there all along, watching, waiting, making sure she was safe. "Help!" Emma's scream cut through the darkness. "Please, my mama!" The transformation was instantaneous. Both men went from relaxed to full alert in a heartbeat. Engines roared to life. One of them, a younger biker named Ryan, was already on his phone. "This is Ryan. We need the president and everyone close. Now!" Emma's mother is in respiratory distress. The other biker, an older man named Jack with combat medic training, ran into the house and dropped to his knees beside Emma's mother. "She's barely getting oxygen. We need to move her now." Ryan was dialing 911. "Yeah, we have a critical respiratory emergency." He gave the address. "We're not waiting for you. We're transporting to Desert Medical ourselves. Have an ER team ready." They lifted Emma's mother with practiced efficiency and carried her to a truck that had materialized. Emma scrambled into the passenger seat. Ryan slid behind the wheel. "Desert Medical is 12 minutes away. We can do it in 7. They flew through the dark Arizona streets. Two motorcycles stayed close, one in front, one behind. In the back seat, Jack was talking steadily. "Stay with me. Your girl needs you. Your girl walked 3 miles today to save you. Breathe. Come on. Breathe." Emma's phone began to buzz, then explode with notifications. The entire chapter was mobilizing. They blew through intersections, horn blaring. 3 minutes. 2. The hospital came into view. Ryan aimed straight for the emergency room entrance. Before they even stopped, the ER doors burst open and a team poured out. But they hadn't been ready for what else was coming. The rumble started low, distant, then closer, then everywhere. Motorcycles poured into the hospital parking lot like a flood. 10 bikes, 20, 50, 100. They kept coming. 250 Hells Angels descended on Desert Medical Hospital that night. They filed into the emergency room waiting area. The night nurse looked up and went pale, but the president stepped forward, his hands up peacefully. "Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. We're here for the woman who just came in. She's the mother of this little girl." He gestured to Emma. "We're her family. We're staying until she's okay. We'll be quiet, we'll be respectful, but we're not leaving." The nurse looked at this massive biker, then at the 249 bikers behind him, then at the small girl with tear-streaked cheeks. Something in her face softened. She nodded slowly. They established a rotation system. 20 men upstairs in the ICU waiting room, 20 more in the main ER area, the rest outside. Every hour they'd rotate. Emma was never alone for a single second. She sat surrounded by giants in leather who took turns bringing her water, getting her crackers, just being there. The president went to the billing office at 2 a.m. and placed a credit card on the desk. "I'm paying for everything, all of it. Every test, every medication, every day in the hospital. I don't care what it costs." The billing clerk blinked at him. In 20 years, she'd never seen anything like this. Who are you people?" The president's face softened. "We're her family. Her husband rode with us. He died and we didn't know. We know now. And he'd have done the same for us, without question. This is what brotherhood means." The nurses came out periodically with updates. Each time every biker would stand. The relief that went through that waiting room when they heard Emma's mother was stable was physical. Grown men collapsed back into chairs. Some put their faces in their hands. One biker actually broke down sobbing, and 2 of his brothers just held him. A young nurse stood watching all of this. You guys really love her, don't you? Her and her daughter. The president looked at her with tired eyes. Her husband was our brother, and you don't abandon family, ever. Emma's mother survived that night, and the next day, and the day after that. Slowly she improved. Emma's mother came home 3 weeks later, still weak but breathing, still tired but alive. And when she walked through her front door, she stopped dead. The house was different. The pile of bills was gone. In its place sat a simple note. All paid. Don't worry about money, just heal. The refrigerator was packed full. Fresh vegetables, milk, eggs, real food. The rent was paid, not just for that month, but for the next 6 months. The medical bills had been absorbed completely. Emma came home from school to find boxes on her bed. New clothes, a backpack, school supplies, everything a kid could need and more. The president visited often, sitting at their kitchen table, telling stories about Emma's father, filling in the gaps, making him real again. One afternoon, he pulled out an envelope. We've established a scholarship fund for Emma. Full ride, whatever school she wants, wherever she wants to study. Undergraduate, graduate, medical school if that's what she wants. Emma's mother's hand flew to her mouth. You can't. That's too much. The president shook his head firmly. It's not too much. It's what her father would have wanted. He gave up everything to make sure she had a future. We're just making sure his sacrifice meant something. You're not alone anymore, he continued. Your family. That's not just words. That's a lifetime commitment. We're here, period. 2 days later, they walked into the clubhouse, and there it sat, the Harley, raised on a platform, spotlighted like the work of art it had become. The chrome gleamed. The paint was flawless. It looked like resurrection. Above the bike hung a wooden plaque with Emma's father's name. Below it, brother, rider, father, hero. Around the bike were mounted photographs. Her father young and laughing. Her father with his arm around the president. Her father wearing his colors, looking proud and alive. Emma's mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing. All the grief she'd been holding in for 2 years poured out. 3 months passed. Life found a rhythm. Emma came to the clubhouse regularly, sometimes for cookouts, sometimes just to listen to stories about her father. But one Saturday, Emma had something with her. She walked straight to where her father's Harley sat on its platform. The president was there. Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out the key, the same key she'd clutched for 3 miles, the same key that had started everything. She held it up, offering it to the president. It belongs here. The president stared at the key, his hand starting to shake. Sweetheart, that's your daddy's key. That's yours. Emma shook her head. The bike belongs here. You restored it. You honored him. You've protected us. This key should be with people who knew him. She pressed it into his hand. The president looked down at the key and tears started streaming down his face. Around the clubhouse, grown men were wiping their eyes. The president pulled a chain from around his neck and threaded the keychain onto it with shaking hands, then lowered it back over his head. The key settled against his chest, right over his heart. I'll never take it off, he whispered. Never. This stays with me until the day I die. Emma stepped forward and wrapped her arms around the president's waist. My dad would be proud you're my family now. The president's voice broke completely. He's watching, sweetheart. And he knows. He knows we found you. He knows we're keeping you safe. Years have passed since that desperate morning when an 8-year-old girl walked 3 miles in the Arizona heat. Emma's 15 now. She's on the honor roll. She's thinking about colleges, about maybe becoming a doctor. The scholarship fund sits waiting. Her mother is healthy, truly healthy. The cancer's in remission, and they're never alone. Emma has 250 uncles now, 250 protectors who show up for school plays and birthdays, who teach her how to change oil and stand up for herself, who've become as permanent and essential as air itself. Every year on the anniversary of the day Emma walked into the clubhouse, the Hells Angels Arizona chapter holds a memorial ride in her father's honor. 250 Harleys line up at dawn. Emma and her mother ride in the president's truck at the front. They end at the clubhouse where Emma's father's Harley still sits, still gleaming, still watching over them all. Emma places flowers next to the bike and whispers words meant only for him. The president stands beside her every time, his hand on her shoulder, that key still hanging around his neck where it's lived for years, where it will live until the day he dies. A promise kept, a legacy honored, a brother never forgotten. Emma's story spread beyond the Arizona chapter, becoming the kind of story people tell when they want to believe in goodness, when they need to remember that family isn't always about blood. News outlets tried to cover it. They declined every time. This wasn't a story for cameras. This was sacred. This was family. A little girl who once walked alone now had a family that would never let her fall. Not when she struggled with homework, not when her mother had health scares, not when she got her heart broken, not when she graduated high school to thunderous applause from 250 bikers. Not ever, because that's what it means when the Hells Angels call you family. It means forever. It means protection. It means showing up. Emma's father gave up everything to be a father, and in doing so, he gave his daughter something more valuable than he could have ever known: a second family, a backup plan written in chrome and leather. If you believe people should be protected when they're vulnerable, if you stand with those who show up when others would turn away, if you think family is about who shows up rather than who shares your name, then share this story. Comment, "Family never falls alone," if this moved you. Because in the heart of Arizona, in a clubhouse where a restored Harley sits gleaming under spotlights, that's not just a saying. It's a way of life. It's a promise. It's the truth that Emma learned when strangers became saviors and a 3-mile walk became the first step toward forever.